I walked into my kitchen that morning and saw them sitting right there on the counter, my car keys, placed next to the empty coffee cup I'd left out the night before, as if they were just part of the breakfast setup. My mom stood with her arms crossed, not looking at me, just waiting. "Mom, what are you doing?" I asked. I already knew the answer. I just needed to hear her say it out loud. "Protecting you," she said. "You're not thinking clearly right now, and until you are, you're not driving." I'm Sarah Chen, 34 years old. I work as a freelance project manager and business consultant in Austin, Texas, and I want you to know right from the start, that morning wasn't really about car keys at all. If you want to know what this was actually about, and why my mother's protection nearly cost me everything, keep listening. Here's what you need to understand about my family. My parents divorced when I was 16. My older brother, Michael, had already left home for college by then. My dad got remarried to Linda within 2 years, and my mom, well, she never quite moved on. The year after the divorce, my mom started referring to Michael as my success. Literally. Not my son who's successful, but my success, like he was proof of something. He went to Stanford, got a job at a tech company, bought a house in California. Every conversation with relatives somehow circled back to him. I went to the University of Texas, graduated with honors, and started building my own client base as a consultant. Solid money, good reputation. But I wasn't Michael. I didn't have a prominent job title at a famous company. I wasn't married. I wasn't giving my mom the story she wanted to tell at dinner parties. By the time I was 28, something shifted in her. She stopped asking about my work. She started asking about why I wasn't married, why I wasn't thinking about my future in a way that mattered. And whenever I set a boundary, like declining an invitation or skipping a family event, she'd say the same thing. "You're isolating yourself. You're cutting me out after everything I did for you." One night, when I was about 29, she called me at 10 p.m. I was working on a contract deadline. "I've been thinking," she said, "and I want to put my house in a joint account with you for protection." I said no immediately, not because I didn't love her, but because I'd seen enough situations where that kind of arrangement became a way to control someone. I told her I'd help her find a good estate attorney instead. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. 3 months before the keys ended up on my counter, my mom had a health scare. Nothing serious, high blood pressure, some lifestyle changes recommended, but she latched onto it. Suddenly I was her problem to solve. She started calling my work, showing up at my apartment unannounced, telling me I was stressed, that I needed to slow down, that I was making poor choices about my time and energy. "You're going to run yourself into the ground," she'd say. "And then what? You'll have no one." I started pulling back a little. I love my mother, but I could feel the grip tightening. The concerned questions were becoming interrogations. The surprise visits were becoming intrusions. That Friday, she called and invited me to dinner on Sunday. I said yes. I should have said I was busy. Sunday came. I drove over to her house in North Austin around 5 p.m. She'd cooked, my favorite actually, pot roast with those little potatoes. The table was set nicely. She seemed genuinely happy to see me. We talked for a while. Normal stuff, work, the weather, a show she'd been watching. Then, about halfway through dinner, her tone shifted. "I've been worried about you," she said. "You're driving too much. Back and forth to client meetings, running all over the city. It's exhausting. You're exhausted." "Mom, I'm fine. It's my job. Your job is killing you, and I can't just sit by and watch it happen. I didn't see it coming." After dinner, we moved to the living room. I was planning to leave in about 30 minutes. She asked me to help her with something in the kitchen. When I stood up to follow her, she closed the kitchen door. "I need your car keys," she said. Not asked. Said. "What? No, absolutely not. Just for a little while, until you slow down, until you take care of yourself." "Mom, that's not happening. I have client meetings tomorrow. I have a life to run. You have a life to save," she said. Her voice was so calm, so certain. "And I'm going to help you, whether you like it or not." She reached out her hand. I should have left right then. I should have walked to my car, driven away, and not answered her calls for a week. Instead, I made the mistake of trying to reason with her. I explained why I needed my keys. I explained that what she was doing was illegal, that taking someone's car keys without permission is theft, or at minimum coercion. She didn't argue. She just waited. When I finally realized she wasn't going to back down, I told her I was leaving. I walked to the door. She had my keys in her hand. "I'm not giving these back until you agree to take a medical leave from work. 2 weeks minimum. You need to rest." I stared at her. "You're serious?" "Completely." "Okay," I said quietly. "I'm calling an Uber." And I left. But I didn't go home. I went straight to my best friend Rachel's place. And that's when I started thinking about what she'd actually done. That's when I realized what this was really about. The next morning, I called my mom and told her I was reporting my car as stolen. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I was just matter-of-fact about it. "If you don't return my keys by 5 p.m. today, I'm filing a police report." She hung up on me. Then the texts started. "I can't believe you'd humiliate me like this. After everything I've done. You're just like your father. Selfish. Ungrateful." I didn't respond. But that evening she called. Her voice was different, softer, almost broken. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I was scared. I was worried you were going to hurt yourself working so hard. I can't lose you. Not after your dad left." And there it was. The real thing. Not about the driving. Not about my health. About her fear of abandonment. About the fact that my independence made her feel alone. I almost caved right there. But then I thought about that phrase she'd used. After everything I've done, she'd said it before, many times, and every time it was attached to a demand, a boundary crossing, a thing I was supposed to owe her. Mom, I love you, I said, but I need my keys back. And I need you to understand that taking them without my permission was wrong. It doesn't matter why you think you did it. So you're going to call the police on your own mother? If you don't give me my keys back by tomorrow at noon, yes, she cried. She told me I was breaking her heart. She said I was the only family she had left, which wasn't true. She has my brother, but he distanced himself from her emotional intensity years ago. The keys arrived at my apartment the next morning via courier. Cold delivery. No note. I thought that was the end of it. I thought she'd back off, regroup, maybe go to therapy or something. I was very wrong. Instead, she pivoted, and this time, she didn't come at me alone. 3 days later, I got a call from my dad. This was unusual. We talk maybe once a month, and it's usually surface-level stuff. Sarah, your mother's very upset, he said. She's concerned about your mental state. I felt my stomach drop. What do you mean, my mental state? She says you're being reckless, overworking, not taking care of yourself, and when she tried to help, you threatened to call the police on her. That's not what happened, I said. She took my car keys without permission. That's theft. There was a long pause. Is it? Or is it a mother trying to protect her daughter? I realized in that moment that my mother had gotten to him first. She'd framed the entire thing, and he was buying it. Dad, she can't just take my things because she disagrees with my life choices. I'm just saying, maybe there's a middle ground here. Maybe you could spend some time with her. Show her you're okay. She's really scared. The conversation ended badly. I hung up, feeling sick. Then came the group text. My brother had been added to a chat with my parents, my dad's new wife, Linda, my mom, and me. The subject line, checking in on Sarah. The first message was from my mom. I've been really worried about Sarah's mental health. She's not sleeping. She's not eating properly. She's driving for work constantly. And when I tried to help by suggesting she rest, she became hostile and threatening. Linda responded, that sounds like burnout. Maybe she should see a therapist. My dad. I talked to her. She's definitely not in a good place. My brother Michael, who I hadn't heard from in 2 months, responded, hey Sarah, I'm here if you need to talk. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I took a screenshot of everything. Then I called my brother privately. Did mom tell you what actually happened? I asked. She said you're having a rough time and threatened to call the cops on her, he said carefully. Michael's always careful. He's a diplomat by nature. She took my car keys, Michael, without permission. I asked her to give them back. She refused, so I told her I'd report it stolen if she didn't return them by the next day. That's not me having a mental health crisis. That's me having a boundary. There was a silence. Then, yeah, okay, that sounds more like mom. I'll stay out of this, but watch your back. She gets like this when she doesn't get her way. He was right, and he knew her patterns. What I didn't know yet was how far she was willing to go. 2 weeks later, I got an envelope in the mail. It was from my mom, but it had come through a law office. My stomach twisted when I saw that. Inside was a document. It was titled Family Care Agreement. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood what I was looking at. It stated that due to my mother's health concerns, I, as her only daughter, Michael wasn't included conveniently, would be granted power of attorney over her finances. More than that, it said I was voluntarily accepting fiduciary responsibility for her estate. But there was a clause, and this is where it got dark, stating that in the event of her death, any debts she had would be paid from my personal accounts before the estate was distributed. In other words, if she died with debt, I'd be paying it. Now, my mom wasn't in massive debt or anything, but she'd mentioned money troubles a few times, credit card stuff, a car payment, and I'd never agreed to any of this. The document was dated 3 weeks before she took my keys. That's when the timeline hit me. The health scare, the concerned phone calls, the surprise visits, the family group chat. All of it had been building toward this. She was trying to get me to agree to this document. The car keys were just leverage, a way to make me desperate enough to sign something I didn't understand. I called an attorney that afternoon. Her name was Susan Price, and she specialized in family law and elder law. I gave her the whole story, the keys, the group chat, the document. I brought her the envelope, the papers, everything. She read through it slowly, making notes. Has your mother officially asked you to sign this? She asked. Not yet, but I think that's coming. Don't sign anything, she said immediately. This document has serious problems. The power of attorney clause is overly broad, and the debt assumption is actually not something you can legally inherit, but putting it in writing like this is a red flag. Someone's trying to confuse the issue. Who? My mom? Maybe. Or maybe she got advice from someone. Do you know who drafted this? I looked at the letterhead. It was a solo practitioner, someone I'd never heard of. A real estate attorney, not even a family law attorney. It was sloppy work. I don't think she hired someone good, I said, or someone competent. Actually, Susan said, I think someone did hire someone, just not someone who'd ask questions. This looks like it was rushed, and it looks like it was designed to confuse rather than clarify. That tells me this might not be your mother's initiative. That was the first time I considered that my mom might not be acting alone, that someone else, maybe my dad, maybe Linda, maybe even Michael, might be involved in this somehow. I told Susan I needed to figure out what was actually going on. She gave me her advice. Document everything. Don't communicate with your mother except in writing, and if anyone approaches you about signing anything, tell them you need to review it with an attorney first. I went home that night and made a list. Things my mom had done. Taken my keys, called my dad and fed him a false narrative, started a group chat involving extended family, had a legal document drawn up. Things that didn't make sense. Why involve a real estate attorney for a family matter? Why use a solo practitioner with no family law background? Why move so fast? And then, the biggest question, who benefits if I sign that document? Not my mom, necessarily. If she's alive, I'm just managing her money. If she dies, I'm liable for her debt. That's not a win for her logically. Unless someone had convinced her that I was a threat, that I was isolating her, that I couldn't be trusted with the inheritance. And if I signed this document, it would prove my commitment to the family. It would also put me in a position where I couldn't leave, couldn't argue, couldn't do anything without risking her financial security. It would lock me into compliance. That's when I understood. This wasn't about her wanting to protect me. It was about making sure I couldn't protect myself. The following Sunday, my mom called. Her voice was lighter, like we'd made peace. "I miss you," she said. "Can you come to dinner? Just us. I want to talk to you about something." Every alarm bell in my body was ringing, but I also knew I needed to hear what she had to say, so I said yes. I made sure Rachel knew where I was. I also took my phone and made sure the record function was accessible, just in case I needed evidence. I drove over around 5 p.m., same as before. She'd set the table nicely again, but this time there was something else. A folder, placed next to the salt and pepper shakers. We made small talk through most of dinner. She asked about my work. I gave vague answers. She talked about her garden. It was almost pleasant. Then she cleared the dishes and brought out dessert, a cheesecake she'd bought from my favorite bakery. "Sarah, I want to talk to you about something important," she said. She was using her serious mother voice, the one she used when she was about to say something she'd rehearsed. "Okay, I'm not getting any younger, and I've been thinking a lot about my future, about what happens if something happens to me, and I've realized that I need you to help me make sure my affairs are in order." She opened the folder. Inside was the family care agreement I'd already seen, but there was something new, a letter, handwritten by her, explaining her wishes, and underneath that, a power of attorney document that had been modified from the original. "I need you to sign these," she said calmly. "They protect both of us, and they show that we have a real understanding about what matters." I didn't touch the papers. "Mom, I'm not signing anything." She blinked. "What do you mean? You haven't even looked at them." I did. Susan, my attorney, reviewed them. She said they have serious problems, and she advised me not to sign. My mother's face went very still. "You hired an attorney to look at my documents?" "I hired an attorney to protect myself, yes. To protect yourself from me." It wasn't a question. It was a statement, said with absolute certainty, like she'd finally gotten confirmation of something she'd suspected all along. "Yes," I said, "because taking my car keys without permission was not okay, and having a lawyer draft documents that don't make sense is not okay, and trying to manipulate me through my family is not okay." I stood up. "I'm leaving, and I'm telling you clearly, I'm not signing anything. I'm not going to agree to power of attorney over your finances. I'm not going to assume liability for your debt, and I'm not going to feel guilty for saying no." "You walk out that door," she said, "and you're walking out on this family." "No, I'm walking away from someone who doesn't respect my boundaries. That's not the same thing." I left. I got in my car. I drove home, and I called Susan. "I need to send her a cease and desist letter," I said. "She just tried to pressure me into signing documents that would have given her control over my finances. I want it on record that I've refused, and I want her to stop asking." Susan didn't hesitate. "I'll draft it tonight." The cease and desist letter arrived at my mom's house on a Thursday. It was formal, legal, and very clear. She was to stop asking me to sign any documents, and any further contact about financial matters would be considered harassment. I expected her to call, scream, or try to negotiate. Instead, there was silence. 3 days of absolute silence. Then, on a Wednesday morning, I got a call from my brother. "Sarah, Mom's in the hospital," he said. "Chest pain. They're running tests." I felt sick. I wanted to believe this was coincidence, but the timing felt deliberate, like somehow, by refusing to comply, I'd caused her to get sick. I drove to the hospital. When I got there, my parents were both in her room. My dad was holding her hand. My mom looked pale, but conscious. When she saw me, tears started rolling down her face. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I'm sorry for everything. The keys, the documents, all of it. I was scared, and I handled it wrong." I believed her in that moment. I thought maybe this crisis had snapped something into perspective for her, so I did something I probably shouldn't have. I softened. I told her I forgave her. I held her hand. I promised I'd help her figure out her finances in a way that made sense for both of us. My dad looked relieved. My brother texted me later. "Good on you for being the adult here." But I also stayed cautious. I texted Susan. She apologized. "Seems genuine, but I'm still concerned about the broader pattern. What should I do?" do? Susan's response: gather everything, every email, every text, every document, make a timeline. If this is a pattern, we need to see the whole picture. So I did. I started with emails. I went back through 4 years of correspondence with my mom and my dad. I noted every time my mom had suggested I wasn't capable of making good decisions, implied that my independence was actually isolation, referenced what she'd done for me as leverage, introduced financial conversations right after I'd set a boundary. Then I looked at texts. The group chat alone told a story. My mom introducing a narrative, my dad absorbing it, my brother staying neutral, Linda reinforcing it. Then I looked at documents, the family care agreement, the power of attorney, the handwritten letter. And then I looked at dates. The document had been drafted on January 15th. The health scare that triggered the urgency had been January 8th. But before that, on January 3rd, I'd turned down my mom's request to help her refinance her car. I'd said I couldn't co-sign, and she'd said, "You're cutting me off. You don't care what happens to me." 4 days later, suddenly, she was sick. That's when I noticed something else. The envelope with the documents had come from an attorney's office on February 2nd, but I'd received a text from my dad on February 1st, asking why I was punishing my mother, like they'd known the documents were coming. I compiled all of this into a spreadsheet: dates, events, communications, context. Susan reviewed it. "This is a clear escalation pattern," she said. "Every time you set a boundary, there's a consequence. Health scare, family mobilization, legal documents. It's designed to make you feel like your independence is dangerous." "What do I do?" I asked. "Right now? Nothing. Just keep documenting. If anything else happens, I need to know about it." But then something else did happen. 2 weeks after my mom came home from the hospital, I got an email from an unknown address. The subject line was blank. When I opened it, my breath caught. It was a PDF, the original draft of the family care agreement, and on the first page, there was a handwritten note. "This was emailed to your mom's attorney on January 15th. It was drafted on January 12th. It was sent by an email address I didn't recognize." I called Susan immediately. "Someone just sent me the original draft of the power of attorney. It wasn't from my mom. It was from someone else." "Who?" Susan asked. "I don't know. The email's anonymous. Forward it to me. Now." I did. 20 minutes later, she called me back. "Sarah, I need you to listen carefully. I ran a reverse email search on that sending address. It's a forwarding service, which is usually a red flag, but look at the draft itself. Look at the formatting. Look at the language." I pulled it up again and really read it, and then I saw it. The language in the document was not legal boilerplate. It was specific. It mentioned my unstable work situation and my inability to make sound financial decisions. It mentioned my lack of family support and my isolation. These weren't generic terms. They were narratives. Someone had written this specific document with very specific allegations about who I was. "This was written by someone who knows you," Susan said. "Someone in your family circle. And they wrote it knowing it was meant to control you. But who? I don't know yet, but we can find out. Do you have a copy of the email that originally sent this to your mom's attorney? The one from January 15th? Not the original email, just the draft. Okay, I'm going to contact your mother's attorney directly. I'm going to tell him that this document was drafted under duress and with false information, and I'm going to ask who referred him and who initially contacted him about drafting it. Can you do that?" I asked. "Absolutely. It's legitimate legal inquiry. If this document was the result of a coordinated effort to manipulate you, we need to establish that." 3 days later, Susan called me back. I got a response from the attorney. He's not happy about being contacted, but he did confirm that the initial referral came from a family friend, someone he wouldn't name without written authorization from his client. My mom wouldn't give that authorization, would she? Probably not. But here's what I did. I subpoenaed her email records. And Sarah, the first draft of that document, the one that was sent to the attorney, it wasn't sent from your mom's email address. My blood went cold. "It came from your father's email address," Susan said quietly. "The one associated with his work account at his company." I couldn't speak. "And there's more. I found a draft of the email that was deleted, but it came back in the trash folder, and it was CCED to Linda, my stepmother. They did this together," Susan said. "Your father and Linda convinced your mother that you were a threat. They had her serve as the proxy because she's your mother, which made it harder for you to push back. But they wrote the documents. They orchestrated the family pressure, and they did it to establish control over your finances, which, if your mother passed, would give them access to whatever inheritance might come to you. It took me several minutes to process that. What do I do now?" I finally asked. "Now," Susan said, "we document the forgery, we establish the fraud, and we file a complaint with the State Bar Association against the attorney who drafted these documents without properly vetting the source." Susan sent a letter to my father's attorney. It outlined everything: the forged documents, the coordinated pressure campaign, the false narratives shared with extended family. It laid out the timeline clearly, and it included a demand. My father and Linda were to stop all contact with me regarding financial or personal matters, effective immediately. If they didn't comply, we'd file for damages. The response came within 48 hours. My father's attorney wanted to mediate. The mediation mediation took place over Zoom. 4 people, plus the mediator. Me and Susan on one side. My father, Linda, and their attorney on the other. My dad didn't make eye contact with me. The mediator asked my father to explain his side of things. We were concerned about Sarah's well-being, he started, but Susan interrupted. Mr. Chen, I have the email you sent to the attorney on January 12th, the one where you drafted the power of attorney documents. Would you like to explain why you wrote those documents, or should I summarize them for the mediator? There was a silence. I was trying to help, my dad said finally. Your mother asked me to help her get her affairs in order. Your mother, Susan said. Or Linda. Another silence. Sarah, my father said, turning to me. I was scared. You were pulling away. You were growing distant, and I thought if we could show you that we cared, that we wanted to help, maybe you'd let us back in. By forging documents, I said. By lying to my extended family? By trying to get me to sign away my financial autonomy? It wasn't that calculated, he said, but he was lying, and he knew it. The mediator intervened. Let's focus on what happens next. What does Sarah want? I looked at Susan. She nodded. I want a written agreement that my father and Linda will not contact me about financial, legal, or medical matters. I want a statement delivered to the extended family, clarifying that I was not acting irrationally or isolating myself, that I was setting healthy boundaries. And I want their agreement that if they violate these terms, I'll pursue legal action without further warning. And, Susan added, we're filing a bar complaint against the attorney who drafted these documents. He should have identified the fraud immediately. The attorney on their side looked genuinely worried. My father nodded slowly. Okay, I'll agree to all of that. Linda didn't say anything. She just stared at the camera. The mediator had everything drawn up by the next afternoon. Cease and desist letter, formal mediation agreement, and a statement acknowledging that I had the right to set boundaries on financial and legal matters. My father signed it. So did Linda. And just like that, it was over. But the real aftermath, that's what took longer. My mom called me a week later. Her voice was soft and confused. Your dad told me about the mediation. He said that they'd done something wrong. Yeah, Mom, they did. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know they drafted those documents. And I hope that was true, but it didn't matter anymore, because the truth was, she'd still let them happen. She'd still tried to use them as leverage, and she'd still sided with them over her own daughter's autonomy. I need some space, I told her. I love you, but I need to heal from this, and I can't do that while we're still in contact. She cried. She apologized. She asked if we could go to therapy together. I said maybe, eventually, but not now. For the first 3 months after, I barely left my apartment except for work. I was exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and think about the whole thing, not obsessively, but in this quiet, persistent way, like my brain was still trying to understand how people I loved could do something like this. Rachel was there through all of it. So was Susan, who checked in on me regularly and didn't charge me for half those calls because she said what I'd done took courage. By month 4, I started to breathe again. I restructured my life. I set clearer boundaries with everyone. I told people no more readily, and I started going to therapy, not for family mediation, but for myself, to process the betrayal, to understand why I'd questioned my own judgment for as long as I had. 6 months after the mediation, I got a text from my brother. Hey, I'm in Austin next month. Want to grab coffee? And I did. When I saw Michael, he apologized immediately. I knew something was off, he said. I should have asked you directly instead of just believing what Mom said. That's on me. It's okay, I told him. And I meant it. He'd been caught in the same manipulation, just from a different angle. We're close now, actually. Closer than we were before all this. My mom and I still don't talk much. I've thought about reaching out. I've drafted emails I never sent. But the truth is, our relationship was based on something unhealthy, on her need to control, and my willingness to accept that as normal. And rebuilding it would require her to understand that, to really understand it. And I'm not sure she ever will. Sometimes I think about that morning with the car keys on the counter, how small it seemed at the time, how I didn't understand it was just the opening move in something much larger. But here's what I learned through all of it. Your boundaries are not selfish. Your no is not a rejection of the person. Your independence is not isolation. And anyone who loves you will respect that. Not reluctantly, but genuinely. I got my autonomy back. I got my clarity back. And I got my life back. And the most surprising thing, I got myself back. The person I was before I started questioning every decision because someone else didn't approve of it. If you've been through something like this, if someone you trusted tried to control you, or manipulate you, or use family loyalty as a weapon, I want you to know something. You're not alone. And your instinct to protect yourself is not wrong. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done? And have you ever had to set a boundary with someone who made you feel guilty for it? I'm reading everything, and I'm here.